Throughout history, women have suffered enormously when it comes to accessing the same basic human rights and recognition as their male counterparts. Women in government are quite the same. They constantly ignore backlash and prejudice for simply being a woman. They must fight twice as hard to be heard and are still undermined by their male colleagues. Looking back to the first woman recognised in Parliament, to our first female Prime Minister. Sexism is still an issue being faced today and is causing our Parliament to be stuck in an all too familiar loop. Australian suffrage movements had been set up all over the continent, fighting for all sorts of rights, equal pay, the right to work, and most importantly, the right to vote. The main argument that suffragettes has was that they were not exempt from paying taxes, so they should have the right to change and create laws. Women in Australia have spent years and years gaining the right to vote. In the years 1902 to 1908, women were able to vote. By the year 1962, they could vote in both state and federal elections. Women now had the ability to work in government. However, the difference between female and male politicians is great, with females constantly under supervision in the public eye. Women in government suffer with the expectations of society daily. From women as early as Enid Lyons to modern politicians have to worry about their image more than the work they are doing and the decisions they are making. An issue such as sexism should be the least of the worries for politicians in government, though it seems to be the biggest issue that they have to face. It took 4 decades for women to finally represent Parliament, and it all began with Enid Lyons, a Tasmanian teacher who went on to play an important role in the Liberal Party. Enid Lyons was 18 when she married Joseph Lyons, a 35-year-old State Minister of Education in Tasmania. Enid soon became his most trusted political advisor. She made herself part of the work that her husband did, including aiding in campaigns and speeches. Enid was known to be a strong public speaker, and this later allowed her to run for a parliamentary position. In 1943, Enid became the first female to be elected into federal parliament. Lyons worked hard on issues she believed to be of most importance. She believed that men and women should be completely equal in rights. Enid introduced welfare payments for mothers and equal training allowances for both females and males. Then, in 1949, Robert Menzies elected her into the position of Vice President of the Executive Council, making her the first female member of Cabinet. An article written in May 2018, a reporter goes into depth about women in the Liberal Party. Enid spoke about her position in the Liberal Party after becoming Vice President of Executive Council, stating that her vice presidency was a toothless position, along with her mentioning that the Liberal cabinet members she worked with only wanted me to pour the tea. With statements like this coming from a respectable figure such as Enid Lyons, shows how no matter the work she did for women's equal rights, she still was seen as a household female. During Enid's time for the Liberal Party, she reached many goals, allowing the welfare payments of women to be passed through, and continuously proving her colleagues wrong. Though the thought of a woman in a high position of power will always come back to threaten somebody, once again beginning to belittle Lyons. Once again proving that society has had trouble with the fact that women can do whatever they put their minds to. In 2010, Julia Gillard was elected into the position of Prime Minister of Australia. She is a vocal activist when it comes to the issue of sexism in politics. During her term as PM, Gillard faced large amounts of criticism, particularly when she announced the carbon tax legislation. Tony Abbott, member and leader of the Liberal Party, controversially used sexist bullying posters as a backdrop during a press conference regarding the carbon tax. The sign in the background of the speech reads, "Ditch the Witch," referring to Julia Gillard. Gillard relives this moment in her documentary, The Killing Season, The Long Shadow. She said during the documentary, "I really don't know why this wasn't a career-ending moment for Tony Abbott. Sexism is no better than racism." Julia Gillard conveys a strong message with this quote. Majority of Australian society could ignore the fact that a Liberal leader supports an offensive poster because he is arguing against a legislation that is unliked by most of the Australian population. Once again, a respectable woman and politician was being downgraded without an attempt to make up for themselves. She was publicly humiliated when Abbott's speech was aired to television. In an article written by Dr. Avery Poole, Gillard mentions that she suffered from private matters being brought into media attention. Things such as her marital status and whether she would be having any children. These issues should always remain private and have no business being anywhere near the thought of politics. Male politicians would never be considered as much as women like Julia Gillard was during the time as Prime Minister. In 2013, Julia Gillard received mass amounts of criticism whilst posing with a knitted kangaroo she had been making for the royal baby. Andrew Bolt, columnist for News Limited, stated, "Gillard is giving encouragement to young female politicians by plying a hobby now synonymous with mad old aunts." This statement implies Julia is going against her normal stance on feminism, and she is teaching the wrong thing to young women. This is an incredibly absurd comment that required no backlash whatsoever. As it seems, not much has changed in the politics when it comes to sexism. It is still extremely evident, particularly when comparing the cases of both Eden Lyons and Julia Gillard. Women like them have constantly struggled proving themselves, from as early as the suffragettes to the first female member of Parliament. Sexism in politics has been blocking issues that need to be resolved. The Australian government has been stuck in the 1900s for too long, living by the same sexist views, prying into the private lives of female candidates, and placing strong, unnecessary pressures when it comes to making decisions. Because of this pressure, these politicians are unable to make the right decisions in some cases, stopping the efforts to brighten Australia's future. Enid Lyons faced years of comments and treatments from her fellow cabinet members not taking her seriously when she was fighting for women's and children's rights. Julia Gillard was getting criticised for knitting a kangaroo. Society has not learned anything between Australia's first in women's politics and is running Australia's reputation when it comes to women's rights into the ground. And because of this, we can conclude that society has not and seems like it will not learn until we face the proper facts. Sexism is evident in the Australian government.